In this video, I'm going to show you how to prepare a polystyrene ball so that you can create your own gazing ball. And then you can stick your own favourite piece of tesserare on it and put it out in the garden so it looks really beautiful. Now, over coming videos, I'm also going to show you other ways that you can create your gazing balls, and then you can choose which is going to be the best one that suits your needs. So anyway, let's get into the video and we'll start. The items I'm going to be using are going to be gloves, a pair of scissors to cut the tape, polystyrene ball. Now that can be any size polystyrene ball, it just depends on the size you need. The one I used I think was around about 23 or 25 centimeters across. You're going to need a cheap paintbrush to apply the thin set, old clothes or an apron, a pot to hold the polystyrene ball in place while we apply the thin set so as it doesn't roll around, the thin set itself, and also the self-adhesive alkaline resistant mesh tape. I'm going to be using a high density polystyrene ball. Now the polystyrene comes in different grades, and you may have seen the polystyrene if you've bought a new TV or something and you've got the packaging. Generally that's a low grade polystyrene. It's reasonably soft if you push it in. This is a high grade, or it can maybe also classed as a display grade, because it is very, very high density and it's very strong. Which means also if you ever have to cut polystyrene and you've got a high grade, high density polystyrene, it's going to be harder to cut than if you use one of the lower grades. Now you can also buy polystyrene balls in two halves and adhere them together. If you need to do that, don't use a solvent adhesive because it will eat into the polystyrene. But I prefer to have the polystyrene balls already adhered together, so all I have to do is just now prepare them. Okay, I've got the polystyrene ball and my tape, and all I'm going to be doing is starting at the top, putting the tape on one side and rolling it all the way over to the other side, flattening it out as I go. And of course it's not going to sit totally flat, don't worry about that too much. Just keep rolling it round, tapping it down till you meet to the other side, and then we're going to just cut that off. So I've just cut it off, there it is there, and I'm going to have an overlap, just a small one, and then we just flatten it out. Then I'm going to get the next one and start here, overlapping about 5 odd mil, not terribly critical, but we do want to overlap it. Again, flattening it out a bit as best as we can. You may have to lift it up and then do it a bit more, and you'll see it'll be sticking up. That's quite okay. What we're going to do, put a cut in it, fold it down, and that will allow the tape to sit a lot flatter on the polystyrene ball than if we didn't do that. And you're going to still have a little overlap here, about 5 mil. And again, we'll put another cut in there, fold that down, fold that out there. And again, we'll do it again, and we'll do it again. Another cut in there like that, fold that down, fold that across. Because you want to maintain around about a 5 mil overlap here. That's going to be critical. Because if you don't do that, then you're going to end up with this tape coming across the other one. And we don't really want to do that. Okay, so we just keep folding it down. Again, it may not sit totally flat, but as long as the majority of it does, that'll be fine. Put another cut in it there. You might need a few more cuts depending on the size of the ball. The smaller the ball, the tighter the tape's going to be on it, because it is going to be a smaller circumference. There you go, flatten that down, and then we'll cut that bit off there, like that. Then we'll do the other side. Turn that around for you. Start it again. 10 mil overlap. Squash that down. keeping the 10mm there. This will pucker up, but it doesn't matter because we're going to just cut that, squash that down, fold that over it. So it's going to continue on like that. Another cut there. Fold that down. It's quite fun really when you get into it. Keep going. Another cut there. Now I'll fast forward this so you don't have to see this boring procedure. Fold that down. Okay, so now we have the ends. Now what we can do on the ends, put tape across there and across there, and then cut that off. So we have a slight overlap here. Then we do it again. And again, cut that off. So I've cut that off. I'm going to flatten that down. I mean, you can always cut your tape, your self-adhesive alkaline resistant mesh tape into strips first, and then stick it on. But I find this way it saves wastage because you're not going to be cutting off excess stuff where you don't want it. You know, if you cut strips, you only need small strips or something like that. So I find doing it this way works better for me. Some people crisscross it all over the place. That's fine as well. It just depends on what's easiest for you and what works for you. There you go. Cut that off there. That's it. Not too bad. So now what we'll do is we'll get the thin set and apply that. Okay, I'm all ready to go. I have my container to put the ball on. I have my thin set already mixed up and it's been sitting there to slake. Now I'm going to just mix it. Final mix. How much you mix up, you just never really know. I tend to mix more than what I really need, but in this particular case, it's probably more than enough. Okay, so we'll put that aside. I have my paintbrush. Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to dip it into the thin set, like that. And before I do that, you'll find that there's pieces sticking up. Just squash them down a bit, but the thin set will push them down anyway. And all we're going to do is get the paintbrush and just put it on. Like that, just pushing down. And I forgot my gloves. Okay, so we're just going to put this on. We're pushing down, and preferably in the way of how you've laid the adhesive, the mesh, so as you don't lift it. Put some here. And when we mix the thin set, we mix it so it's probably a little bit more than more liquidy than a peanut butter consistency, but we don't want it too thin because we want it to adhere rather than just go everywhere. And you can do it in two halves as well. You can apply the thin set on one half and then turn the ball over and do the other half. But I prefer to do it all in one go. So I hope you can see this on camera. Just smoothing it out a little bit. As you go. bit more there. And if your ball, the polystyrene ball, is not a high density ball, you can apply more coats of thin set once it's cured. And I don't mind it a bit rough, you know, as in, because I'm going to be using thin set to adhere my tesserare anyway, so it doesn't really matter if it's a bit rough. But you can also sand it back a bit too. If you find you've got some spots that you're not happy with, you can always sand it back. You may have a better way of doing this. This is just the way I've done it, and it does work for me. But by all means, if you have a better way of using this, well then drop it into the comments section on the YouTube channel and let me know as well as everyone else know. Because there's always more than one way to do a job. And I let this cure overnight. And if I'm not happy with it, I'll just add another coat. You know, sitting on the base, it's going to mark the thin set, but don't worry about it, because before it's totally cured, we come back and we smooth it out. So as you take out that mark from the rim of the pot. A bit there. It's got it. Probably enough thin set over everything. So don't be too worried about if you've got, you know, little bumps and knocks over it, because really at the end of the day, you're going to be covering it anyway, but you can sand it back a little bit, you know, sand off those lumps. I love thin set, especially this brand, which is Ladder Creek. And I'll put a video up in the corner there, a link to a video, so you can see why I use this brand and also how to use this brand. Before it's cured, we'll come back over it and smooth it out a bit more. This is just to get the basics done. All right, so we'll be back shortly. Okay, it's been about 3/4 of an hour and the thin set is on its way to curing. It's still got a way to go, but now this is the time that I just give it a little bit of a wipe over to knock any of those rough spots off that we don't want. But I like my gazing balls to have a bit of a rough area to them. I just feel it gives it a bit more tooth for the tesserare to adhere to. Now, the paintbrush that I used before, I did wash out in cold water outside because I'm going to use this, so it is fairly dry. And also make sure that you don't wash anything out when using thin set or grout in your sink anywhere. Wash it outside because it will block your drains up, and that's going to be a very expensive bill to get that fixed. So now what I'll do is I'll just wipe it over any rough marks there. As you can see, there's bits falling off the side, and we're just smoothing it out a little bit, not putting any real pressure on it. We can also do it with our hand. You can just tap it as well if you feel that's better. It's another alternative if you like it. I just use the paintbrush, but you can use both if you like, paintbrush and your hand. Okay, so that's really about as smooth as I want it to go. I don't want it to be any smoother. Now, when we flip this over, it'll still be quite moist on the other side, and you'll find it'll adhere. So we just flip that. There it is there, and we just put it in there. And again, we're just going to wipe this over, just to smooth out any spots that we don't want. And it'll have a rim mark around it where it's been sitting in the pot. That's fine, that's not an issue. We're just going to wipe that off. Just smooth it out, not wipe it off. There we go. And if you want to, you can just tap it as well. Okay, let's have a look at the material costs for producing this gazing ball substrate. Now, I use the Ladder Creek Thin Set brand, and that cost me $8. The mesh tape I didn't use a lot of because you do get quite a lot on a roll, and that cost me $1.50. Now the polystyrene ball, which I used for this, is a large one, and it was around about 25 centimeters across, and that was $14.95. However, if you're producing a gazing ball for outside, you probably wouldn't need this size. You'd probably go the next one down, and that price was about $9.95. And that, of course, as you go down, that reduces your cost on all your other materials as well. Now the time to apply the mesh and the thin set to finish, excluding the curing times, because I did come back a couple of times just to pat the thin set down and to get any bumps off, that was about 40 minutes. Now if you do require further layers of thin set, then of course your cost will go up because you're applying more layers. So the total cost in Australian dollars to produce this gazing ball substrate was $24.45. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Enjoy.